Hello and welcome to another episode of Kingdom 1000. It is my huge pleasure to welcome our guest today. But before we start, you'll have noticed, I'm sure, that we haven't had our opening credits yet. That's because there is something really important I wanted to say. We have tried really hard to make sure that this show isn't just about celebrating equality, but equality is imbued with the whole of the project. And obviously, we have got people from all sorts of different races as our guest. We've had people from all sorts of echelons of society as our guest. There is one element, though, that we are really struggling as a small, independent, not-for-profit, trying to be as equal as possible, and that is making us as accessible as possible for the hard of hearing community. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to reach out to you, our audience, to ask if you know of anyone who would love to be a guest in this program, maybe join us and talk about what equality means to your community and their community, and how they would celebrate what equal rights and equal justice has meant for them, how they would celebrate this 1,000-year anniversary of the law that has allowed so much to happen in the world today. So please do get in touch with us. You can do that through the kingdom1000.com website, or you can find us on social media at World Storytelling Café on Facebook and on the website there. We'd love to hear from you. Right now, though, let's get on with the show.
Different words describe different people. But in the eyes of the law, there's one that fits us all. Human right number 7. We're all equal before the law. What are human rights? Find out at youthforhumanrights.org.
Hello again. It is my huge pleasure to welcome you to Kingdom 1000, where we are celebrating the fact that equal justice has been a concept in the Western world for 1,000 years. Well, my next guest today is going to, I'm sure, tell us that it has been a concept for even longer than that, and whether or not it is something that is being practiced all around the world is something that is definitely contentious. It's definitely a journey that we are keen to move towards. But 1,000 years ago, a law was passed that really did start us moving in that direction here in the Western world. A law that influenced Magna Carta, a law that influenced the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And in this very special episode, instead of hearing a story about the time that we are looking at for this law, you are actually going to see the law itself. We have for you the chance to look at Knut's Proclamation of 1020 and examine it with two historians. But before we get to that, it is my huge pleasure to welcome a guest this week who herself has already taken the issue of equal justice to kings and presidents and world leaders, and has worked with organizations that you'll have heard of like UNESCO and UN. I'm seeing a smile on her face, so I'm pretty sure I haven't slipped up yet. I'm going to introduce you to Mary Shuttleworth. There she is. Hello, Mary. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello. It's wonderful to be here with you.
So Mary is the president of Youth for Human Rights International. Have I got all of that right?
You certainly have, Chip. And
yeah, sorry, keep going.
No, I wanted to congratulate you on your epic tales. As an educator, I'm impressed and applaud your story-led learning initiatives. We all love stories, so it's really fun to be here with you.
Do you know what? I am so glad and grateful to you for mentioning that, Mary, because I keep meaning to say in these episodes that if people want to use the stories of Kingdom 1000 as a teaching resource, we've got a team of teachers who have done some incredible work listening to all of the stories already, and they've put together some ideas for teachers to explore these in their lessons and so on, and I keep forgetting to say that, so you've reminded me. I will try and make sure I remember to say that again at the end. But are you a teacher yourself then, Mary? Is that why you were exploring those?
That's correct. Yes, I have a doctorate in education, so for me it's all about education, education, education.
And that's why you set up Youth for Human Rights International then, yeah?
Correct.
So really briefly, because I know we're going to talk about it in a lot more detail later on, but really briefly, what is YHRI?
Well, the purpose of Youth for Human Rights is very simple. It's to teach youth about human rights, specifically the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and inspire them to become advocates for tolerance and peace.
Fantastic. And obviously education is a really important way to do that. I mean, it's the most formative years of our life, isn't it, in the youth period. Is there any particular age range that your organization works with, or does it start right from kindergarten?
Really, the concept of human rights starts at home, it's what lessons parents teach, especially when there's more than one sibling, of sharing toys and so on. But our program tends to be very appropriate from about the age of 10. But I'll share with you later on, I'll share with you a precious story about a little 5-year-old, and I think you'll enjoy that.
I certainly shall. Well, then, it's absolutely perfect that you should be joining us, because this is exactly what this program was set up to do, to let everybody know that this is something that has been in the Western world for 1,000 years. This is a journey that we've been on, and we're still on it, but let's celebrate this major milestone of 1,000 years since this particular concept of equal justice came into being. Obviously, it's had an impact on you. We can tell that just from what you've said already, but what would you say equality actually means to you?
The word equality to me implies actions. So to me, equality is the balance of rights and responsibilities and working together with those to create a more peaceful world.
That is beautiful. I love equating equality with action, and that's definitely the way it needs to go. There have clearly been people in the world who have managed to do that, who have managed to take action based on what they've seen happening around them. And one man who started this 1,000 years ago was somebody who had just taken over the English world of the time, which was a whole group of nations that covered the island of Britain from Northumbria down to Wessex. His name was Knut. He was a Danish king, so he was an invader, he was a conqueror, but he was accepted by quite a few of the nations here because there were many Danes already living on the island of Britain. There were a few who weren't quite so happy with him, but he was better than the king that they'd had before, so they still welcomed him with reasonably open arms. But what Knut really needed to do early on in his reign was stop these different kingdoms from bickering among themselves. And what we're going to do now is we are going to meet Dr. Charles Insley, the senior lecturer in medieval history at the University of Manchester, and M.J.Trow, one of the leading biographers of King Knut, to discuss the law of Knut's Proclamation 1020 itself in its home in York Minster. So this video that I'm about to play for you, I will just quickly let you know, was recorded before the pandemic. So that's why you won't see any social distancing observed either by us or the crowds of people that we caught on camera as well. So here comes Knut's proclamation of 1020. Well, welcome to York in the beautiful setting of York Minster. With me is M.J.Trow, one of the biographers of Knut. What's the name of your biography?
Knut, Emperor of the North.
Emperor of the North. That makes him sound really grand,
It
doesn't it? And we're also joined by Dr Charles Insley, Senior Lecturer in Medieval History.
That's right.
Fantastic. And Charles, if I could start with you, why has this text brought us to York?
Well, so the text we're going to be looking at the moment is the only copy we have of a letter in the name of Knut, written for Knut, addressed to the English in around about 1020, in which he promises to be a good and firm lord and protect the English. Mm-hmm. And it's one of our first times we can see an English king addressing the English political nation.
Well, there's lots there to unpack, isn't there? But you mentioned that this is a letter from Knut. So if we can start by finding out what brings it to the beautiful surroundings of York Minster.
Well, it's copied into this remarkable manuscript, the so-called York Gospels. These are a set of Gospels written in around about 990, probably in Canterbury, and then brought to York, possibly by Archbishop Wulfstan himself on his promotion to York from London. So this letter has been copied into this sacred book, I think, to preserve it, but also to kind of almost sacralise it.
Well, we should better get looking at it then. Can we go through and see what else is in there?
So, classic gospel book. Each gospel has a carpet pages, beautifully ornate, decorated pages, and we go through each gospel. It's Mark and St. Luke. Then the Proclamation.
Absolutely, and it is one of the oldest surviving English text documents.
There are some from slightly earlier, from the 8th and 9th centuries, but this is still one of a relatively small number of documents or books that survive from before normal conquest.
So what makes this one special?
Well, because this is, Knut is a conquering king, and this letter is written in late 1019, early 1020, to the English after 4 years of absolute tumult and chaos. And it's essentially Knut saying, English and Danes, I will be a good lord to you. There's a phrase he uses here. And I will hold to Gottes Richtung and to Richt Warlage and to God's law and secular laws. This is Knut promising to be a good king to his subjects.
That sounds like something that you'd expect lots of kings to want and to do, so is it?
Well, one would imagine yes, but this is the first time we see it in words. A king essentially almost entering into a contract with his people. And it's interesting that he talks about English and Danes. This is the English people can be multi-ethnic.
Mm-hmm. So Maya, I know in your biography you talk about Knut's conquering of the land. So how did it actually look before he got here?
Well, what you have is very much a disparate country. There really is no such thing as England, nothing like a single nation at all. We have 7 Saxon kingdoms, and even then you have subdivisions within those 7. So it's very much a fragmented situation. With local customs, local laws, local rulers, and conflict and tension between them. What Knut does is to weld that lot together. He didn't do it alone by any means, and there is already a movement under Alfred for that to start. But what he does with these laws, talking about the English and the Danes, is to create a single homogeneous group, and shows how the country is developing into what we might refer to as a single nation state.
And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about how some of the country was the Danelaw. I think you sort of divided up, don't you? Did they actually call themselves the Danelaw back then?
That's a more recent term. There's certainly references in 4 Edgar, so the Law Code 4 Edgar, and in the Law Code 3 Ethelred to the law of the Danes, Danish law. So people are very conscious of a legal boundary in this part of the country the legal customs are going to be different, the legal language is different. The language in which you talk about the sort of subdivisions of the landscape is different. In Yorkshire they don't have hundreds, they have wapentames as a kind of basic unit of local lordship. So there's a real division there.
So what this letter is doing, can we say, is sort of uniting the two systems in a way?
Well, that would be my reading of it. I don't know whether Charles would agree.
No, I think this is Knut appealing to English people of different heritages, I think is the way I look at it.
Okay. Yeah.
These are all subject to the English kingdom, but they're of different, they might have different senses of identity, what that actually means, and Knut is appealing to them both.
I can see a huge change in the man's personality, his grasp. You know, he starts up as a Viking thug, ends up as a ruler who really wants to do the job well.
Well, before we go into how that might have happened, let's just see if we can find the evidence for this, because we've hopefully got it in front of us here.
So it starts with a kind of standard letter address. Knut King greets, so it's the archbishops, it's archbishopess, and all his kingdom, all his theodship. And it says here 1200 and 200, so that's high and low. That's the kind of, this is a socially, making quite a social comment there. And I say to you, I will be there, I suppose, strong Lord. So it's a kind of subtle comment on, well, you've not had that really, have you, recently?
You said that this is one of the first times, or the first time, you've seen a sort of contract between the monarch and the people. Would this also therefore be the first time you've seen this sort of language?
I think so. I mean, there's, in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle in 1014, it's after Svein Forkbeard's death, it says the Witan accepted Ethelred back if only he would govern them more justly than before. So there's that sense there, but we don't see what it looks like. Whereas this here, we actually have a king essentially negotiating almost, or setting up to say, I will be a good lord to you. I will hold to the laws, and I will protect you. And he talks about here, further down, if anyone, lay or ecclesiastical, Danish or English, goes against God's law, against my kingship, and against secular law, then, you know, I will sort that out.
So, I mean, it sounds very harsh. He's basically saying everybody is subject to the law.
Yes.
But it also sounds like he's doing his best to really include everybody in this. So
that's right. I think he's building bridges, really,
Yes.
isn't he? There is a purge. He does wipe out his key opponents after Ironside's death. They are removed. Then it's his chance to build new men, a new start, really.
Yeah.
So just to just give us a little bit of a point of comparison, I guess, it's about 50 years later we have the Norman invasion. What does William do differently?
Well, the striking thing is there are clearly new men who come with Knut, and there are new big men who emerge out of Knut's reign, but there are also lots of Englishmen still in important positions of power and lordship. By 1086, there are hardly any Englishmen in the top tier of English society. They're all Normans or Bretons or Flemings, but mostly Normans. So there's been a wholesale change in that ruling elite, which there isn't after 1016.
So I just want to pick up on something that you said earlier then, Mike, when you were talking about this being sort of the first time you get a political entity of England. And obviously England is very clearly mentioned there. Is this then the first time we see that this word being used in a political text?
I would say it's certainly a political text.
Yeah.
I mean, the homilist and cleric Elfrich uses the phrase Englerland in the 990s, but this is the first time we see it in connection with a kind of political community. This is Englerland.
So where did the word English come from then?
In the early 10th century, Saxon is actually probably the most common term to describe what we would call English, and that's certainly how outsiders saw the English. So in both Welsh and Scottish, famously, the word for an English person is essentially Saxon, whether it's Saeson in Welsh or Sassenach in Scottish. But so at some point, the Anglicuna, as Alfred the Great calls them, becomes the more dominant form of identifying these people.
Which is interesting, because Alfred himself was a Saxon. So
Yes, West Saxon. Yes.
And we know as well that Alfred was very religious. So could it have been that this idea of Alfred had to sort of bring his people together with the Angles to beat the Danes back into the north? He was sort of attaching a religious purpose to being... So it really fits for me then that what you were saying earlier about Elfrich using the word England, it kind of makes sense that it would first appear in those texts and that sort of context, like the kingdom of everybody who is a Christian on the island of Britain is basically what it's saying, isn't it? Yeah. And then Knut is sort of solidifying that and saying, okay, well, this is a kingdom where everybody who lives here, high, low, English, Dane, you're all subject to this law. You're all on the same side. So while I'm out in Denmark, don't start fighting with each other. Would you say that that's how he's ending here?
I mean, there's, in particular here, they've got this instruction. And ich berde alle meine Jerefum. So I'm telling my reeds, my officials, if they want to maintain my friendship, they have to be fair and just, sweet and mild heartedness, mild of heart. They're not to oppress the people. The sort of thing you would later find in a coronation promise.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, there are parallels between this and Henry I's coronation promises in 1100.
Mm-hmm. So it is a development from Edgar's...
Very much so. And Knut's legislation, partly because it's the longest legislation, the longest body of Anglo-Saxon law we have, is the model that's used post 1066. It's Knut's laws they look to, that Henry I certainly looks to in 1100.
And is he effectively then closing off what Alfred started?
Yes, except that you've got the European dimension as well.
Yes.
The Emperor of the North thing. You've got Denmark, you've got Norway, you've got part of Sweden, which was never part of Alfred's brief. So it's bigger than Alfred.
Knut is also a European player. He attends the coronation of Conrad II in 1027.
That's right. Yeah.
Only English king, I think, to attend an imperial coronation.
Yeah.
His daughter is married to Conrad's son. Now, unfortunately, the daughter dies before children can happen, but there's that tantalising prospect of Knut as the grandfather of a Holy Roman Emperor.
That's right.
Well, there is lots there for us to pick up on later on in the project, and the conversations that I'll be having with Mai down in Cambridge and Charles down in Oxford. We'll look at Wulstan, we'll look a little bit more at the Normans, but we can see already we've got a king of England, we've got an England, and he is trying to include everybody in a sort of sense of fairness. So we very much hope you'll join us then for those. In the meantime though, Mai, Charles, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Jim.
And as you heard at the end there, we are going to be seeing more of Charles and Mai later on in this series, exploring the further developments that Knut took to build on that law. And this is one of the things that I love the most about this period of history and this particular document. For so long, Magna Carta has been held up as the staple of equal justice and equality because, of course, in that document, we see the nobles themselves going to the king and saying, we want to be seen as people too. And King John signed that and sort of agreed that, yep, equal justice should be applied to all. The king shouldn't be an exception to that. And yet what you just saw was a document which a king actually proposed himself. And although it's not yet complete, there are other laws he's going to pass over the next 7 years, which are going to build on it and get us closer to what we actually see in Magna Carta. And unlike King John, who went and actually tried to get Magna Carta thrown out and tried to actually, say that, no, that's not the way, it's the king who should be in charge. That's clearly not what Knut was doing here. He was trying to make sure that everybody in his kingdom, no matter what their nationality, had exactly the same equal access to the law. And with that in mind, I'd like to come back to our guest because Mary, this isn't a very popular law. We're only, I actually only started finding out about this law about 4 years ago. 2016 was when I first heard about it. And it was a complete shock to me that Magna Carta was not the start of all of this. And I know as well from having a look at some of the wonderful videos that you folks at YHRI produce to help people learn the history of human rights and equal rights, that this document didn't get mentioned there. So I guess my first question to you is, what was your immediate response in discovering that Magna Carta was actually 200 years late?
Well, of course, I'm an educator, so it's always precious to learn, to develop, to expand one's understanding, and to discover new, incredible contributions and valuable contributions to bringing the world where we are today, imperfect as it is, but those stepping stones, those milestones toward bringing us where we are today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so you feel that it should be recognized, that this is a milestone that we should be marking?
Oh, absolutely. I think that what we've looked at is that you know, when we think in terms of 1,000 years ago, well, things were a little bit different. For example, I'm a woman, a mother, a proud grandmother, and of course a teacher. When I was still at school, women rarely went to university. Not all women were allowed to vote. And there were only a few female doctors. Well, very few women owned major businesses or held executive positions in such major companies. But look at us now. Today, we are advancing in so many fields. We own major companies, we're doctors, lawyers, pilots, and just so much more. Women are taking the lead and making history. So yes, we should celebrate. We should celebrate where we're at, and realize at the same time that we still have a long way to go.
Yes, absolutely. We've mentioned on this program before that, I mean, in many ways, the fact that you and I are having a conversation right now on a completely equal footing is just absolutely amazing compared to what it would have been like 1,000 years ago. But we definitely have a long way to go. There's so much more to be done. Given what there is to be done, and I know you want to talk about some of the injustice as well, and I want to make sure that we have time for that, because it is really, really important. But I also want to just ask what you think the value of a celebration is going to be in terms of then looking forward, looking back 1,000 years, seeing where it all started. What can we get from that to help us move into hopefully the next 1,000 years or even shorter?
Exactly. Well, the value is that, like anything, one has to celebrate. One should imagine milestones, work toward those milestones, and celebrate those milestones along the way. If one doesn't, well, we get discouraged, and then we really accomplish a lot. But when you look back, you say, wow, we've really accomplished a lot. And to me, the difference is that we can build on those successes. Now, in addition to the proclamations, declarations, constitutions, and laws, we have workable models we can follow. It kind of reminds me of that children's story, The Little Engine That Could. I'm sure you know about it.
Oh, yes.
We've passed the, I think I can. I knew I could. Now, working together, we can tackle the next hill because we know we can.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. And as we saw in that discussion with Charles and Mai, yes, Knut was thinking about uniting different nationalities and different classes, but there was clearly a lot that he missed out. I mean, gender wasn't mentioned in there at all. And again, like I've already mentioned earlier on today, the idea of different abilities, slavery wasn't really it wasn't really an issue in Britain back then anyway, but again, it wasn't really mentioned there. So there were a lot of building blocks to go. So with that in mind, bearing in mind everything that you've just said there, what do you see are the major issues we still need to be tackling?
Well, to me, the worst form of human rights abuse is in fact slavery. As somebody who's done a lot of work in the field of helping victims, releasing victims, finding victims, massive campaigns, she one day said to me, well, the only human right that these victims of modern day slavery have is the right to life. That's startling. That's startling. But that was only until I found out about organ trafficking. And then I realized that, oh dear, it goes even worse than that. So according to UNICEF, 1.2 million children are trafficked across international borders. Modern day slavery. And just during this COVID-19 period, this pandemic, that's horrific all within itself. There was a case reported in Peru of 1,200 women and children, persons going missing in Peru. That's just in the last few months and during these difficult conditions. So to me, top of the list is slavery.
Those statistics are sickening. Really, I can't think of any other word to describe it. It's difficult to know where to go on from there, because yeah, that does seem like such an atrocity, which is happening right under many people's noses. And
Absolutely.
There's so much news going on in the world right now, obviously about the pandemic, and people are going to be interested in things that are relevant to them, like the progress of vaccines and like elections taking place and everything. But so much of that is a mask, isn't it, for activities like you mentioned, which are happening all the time in places, well, even in where you and I live, Mary. You're over there in LA. I'm here in the UK. It's a global problem.
It's a global problem
right under our noses.
Yep.
So yes, we should, as you've mentioned, take the fact that we've got this milestone to say, okay, let's not be discouraged now. Let's see how much has changed because of the impetus that people have brought to it, and the drive of people such as yourself to go out there and make change and bring these problems to the right people. But you mentioned right at the start that you're a teacher. Your organization is based around education. So how do you see education being a solution in this crisis?
Well, education, knowledge is power. And the point about these atrocities compared to these incredible documents that we already have, the laws, the constitutions, and so on, the problem is that they are not taught. And that's why I just love your program. I love your initiative, because it's storytelling. These important documents should be taught and known and understood, at least conceptually, by all of our kids. We should know that there are local laws, there are local constitutions, national, international documents that are ours, that defines our human rights. And look at the gem of Knut and this whole new discovery for me. That's fantastic. But it comes back to teaching it, and teaching these very complex documents in a way kids can easily understand. And that's where I just love the work you do and totally support it, because it's about stories, it's about people, it's about making it relevant for the students so that they can see how that relates to them.
Absolutely. That's what storytelling is all about, isn't it? It's showing. Well, the reason why we decided to make this a storytelling show, really, the reason why it's here at the World Storytelling Café, is because these documents didn't just come into being. There was a world that gave birth to them, and that world had real people in it with real emotions, real feelings. They wanted to pass on these stories, and those stories eventually led to the action that you were talking about earlier. So people started seeing their relationships with each other as more and more equal. If you could enjoy a story about someone from another country while you are a peasant in your own, you start seeing a kinship there, which draws you closer together. So we certainly at Epic Tales and here at the World Storytelling Café, I think we definitely side with you on the idea that storytelling is the way to educate about community and drawing people together. And yeah, about these documents too.
Exactly. Well, there's a favorite story I'd like to share with you.
Yeah.
And if I may. So it's about Article 29 of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Well, you see, to me, human rights are like a bicycle wheel. We have 30 human rights. 29 of them are like the spokes of the wheel. The right to education, the right to a nationality, the right not to be discriminated against, and so on and so on. 29 human rights. But, and here's my little prop. Just like any bicycle, that wheel will not work without the hub in the middle. And that hub, to me, is Article 29, our duties, our responsibilities. Just every student that's in school has the right to an education. Not every student in the world, but certainly the majority of our students have the right to an education. But if they don't take responsibility for that education, if they don't do their homework, pay attention, and so on, they lose their education. Not because somebody took away their right to education, but because they didn't take responsibility for that education. So to me, every human right that we have, every right, whether it's this law or that, the Constitution or what have you, we all have our own personal responsibility to make that human right work. And that's the story of the bicycle wheel.
That is brilliant. Fantastic. And the great thing is you can see that working with absolutely everybody, because we all understand bicycles, we all understand the concepts that you're talking about there, of how wheels work. So you can just see how it all fits together.
Well, I was telling that little story in Africa, at a school in Africa, and after the lecture I came out and I was presented with this little wire car with the wheels that work. there's even a spare tire in the front. So that's the story of the bicycle wheel.
But it's absolutely right as well that I think you are right to cite the importance of responsibility, and that goes in every direction, because it's one thing to have rights, it's another thing to use them and to stand up for them and to stand up for others as well. And the reason why I think the wheel is such a powerful image is because it's only going to get you somewhere if it's turning, and for it to turn it needs all of those spokes and it needs that hub at the center. So that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. The other thing I like about the bicycle wheel is because the bicycle wheel touches the ground. It's on the ground. It's real. I've traveled to 93 countries. We have to see human rights in reality. It's no good. Of course, it's very valuable to have the documents, to have the laws, to have all these proclamations. But if we don't see those rights in reality, of course, in this imperfect world on a gradient scale, I'm too impatient for all of that, but that's just me.
It's not just you. I think there's lots of us who are impatient for it, don't worry.
But we want those rights to hit the ground, to really be where we're at, to really touch reality that we deal with. And that's another aspect of why I like that old bicycle wheel.
Definitely. And folks, while we're here, if you would like to have your bicycle wheels touch this ground here in the World Storytelling Café and put your questions to Mary, then you can do that. You just need to go to kingdom1000.com or worldstorytellingcafe.com if you're not there already, and click the little join story button. It's a little gold button. It might say join meeting, actually. I'm not sure. I'm looking at my elf. I would just say join story. Okay, yes. Thank you, Bianca. It says join story. Click there, and you can come and be with us actually in our audience, and you can put questions to Mary about the invaluable work that her organization is doing and that she herself has done all around the world to champion and trumpet human rights and equality in all of the places it's needed. While we are waiting for folks to come here and start filling out our chat box with questions for us, Mary, you mentioned earlier a story about a 5-year-old.
That's right.
I'd love to hear that one.
Well, there's this wonderful little girl who grew up in Australia, and very happy family life, wonderful parents, and all went well until she was 5. Why? Because that's when she went to kindergarten. And at kindergarten, that's where the bullying started. So she arrived back at home saying, Mama, absolutely, I'm not going back to school. No more school for me. Of course, kids at 5 call kindergarten school. So her mother was distraught. Here's this 5-year-old. Usually schooling goes until 18. That's 13 long years. What is she going to do? Because the one thing she can't change is the fact that her child stutters. So how is she going to help her child face those bullies, face school, go back to school, and thrive while she has the disadvantage of stuttering? So she went online, found the Youth for Human Rights materials, which, by the way, I can show you here. It's free of charge on our website, youthforhumanrights.org. You can order it free of charge or just download it. In these times, I think that's the quickest and easiest. Anyway, she got these materials and told her 5-year-old little girl to come and sit next to her. I'm going to teach you your human rights. My what?
Wow.
Anyway, now there are 30 human rights. So clearly the mother is not going to teach 30 human rights to a 5-year-old. It's not going to happen. But after about 4 or 5 of the little videos that we have, similar to the one that you saw in at the beginning, or that you showcased at the beginning of this program, this little girl suddenly sat up and said, I have human rights. That's fantastic. But the problem is those kids at my school, they don't know about these videos. So her mother took the little videos to school and with the teacher's permission, showed one of the human rights here and there, that 5-year-old. So you take one at a time. And after just a few of those videos, all the discrimination, all the bullying completely stopped. Well, this was a new little girl, proud and confident and loved school. But the problem was that at karate, those kids bullied her. So she asked her mother to take the videos to karate. The sensei agreed. And again, slowly, the mother was sharing these little videos with the kids. In your story-led learning module or way, they got it. They got the concept, and the bullying stopped. This mother was beside herself. She was so thrilled. She wrote to us and told this little story. Well, for us, it was just one package that had gone out in the mail. When we heard the story, we invited her to come to our International Human Rights Summit. We hold those once a year, for example, at the United Nations, and bringing youth from around the world together to share what they're doing. Remember, we're education, using human rights education to make an impact in their community. And we asked her to come and share her story. Well, when this little one arrived, at that time she was 7, And we were going to go over the speech with her, but, well, she couldn't really see much beyond the podium. So we got her a box. And on the day of the event, she climbed up onto her box. She told her story proudly, and then she leant over the podium and said, if I can teach human rights, you can too. So that's the story about a 5-year-old. So when you ask me, when's it appropriate to teach human rights? It's always appropriate to teach human rights.
That is absolutely fantastic. And the great thing about it is that I have seen that sort of thing in action myself as well. I've seen children just grow massively and super fast in confidence the moment you let them see that they are actually in charge here. They're in charge of their experience. It is really wonderful, and that's clearly what your resources do. They empower people, and children especially, to see just that they have control, I guess, control over what they get to see and what they get to do, and their experience of the world. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That was such a wonderful, valuable story.
Our pleasure. It's the magic of knowledge shared through stories.
Absolutely. And well, then, speaking of knowledge and sharing stories, and the fact that we've got a celebration here, we've got a milestone to celebrate. What we're doing in this series is we are meeting with creatives of all different kinds to find out ways that absolutely anybody could celebrate this milestone, celebrate equality and equal justice, or equal rights, or whatever you want to call it. So what thoughts have you had, Mary, for how we could mark this milestone?
Well, I have spent almost 20 years of my life doing just that, with the broad concept of human rights. And to me, one of the most valuable and easy to share is artwork. Now, once a year, we do an art competition, art, poetry, essays, and so it's on our website, and people, youth simply send in their submissions. And I suggest that you use this model because it's very workable. May I share some?
Yeah, please do. Absolutely.
Okay. So here's a precious picture. Free to be who you want to be. I hope it shows up okay on your screen over there. And I'll share. Beautiful. Yes, I'll share another one.
How old was the painter of that picture?
These are all three that I'm going to share with you are about 10 years old.
Oh, right. Excellent.
Yes, 10, 11. From Indonesia, from all over.
Oh, wow. Brilliant.
Yeah. So, okay, if you can see this one, I don't know. I'm not very good at all of this. Let's see.
Up a little bit. There we go.
Okay.
To your left, I think. Maybe to your right. I'm not sure. Perfect. Okay. There we go.
Can you see it? Okay. Yes. So this one, her name is Abigail, and she said that everyone is a winner in the human race.
Ah, that is fantastic. What a statement.
Incredible, huh?
But she wasn't 10, was she?
Believe it or not, she was 11 at the time.
Wow.
One last picture I'm going to share with you. And this is welcome to school. Now, let's see if we can position that.
To your right a bit, I think. Oh,
how's that?
There we are. Fantastic.
You got it? Welcome to school. And they've really got the concept of inclusion, working together. Everybody's welcome. So
that is brilliant.
So the reason I love art is because it's so easy to share, and it's not about the ability to do the art. Obviously, I'm sharing with you some of the ones that they clearly have incredible ability, but I'm sharing it with you because the concept, it's phenomenal how these kids watch the little videos, learn their human rights, and then come up with these concepts of what do human rights mean to me. And I just must say that it's very important to say human rights, because most people, when they think about human rights, they're actually thinking about human wrongs. And that's something that we have to change in our minds. When we talk about human wrongs, they are human wrongs. They have to be addressed. We are talking about human rights. We're talking about the world we want to see in our imperfect state. Where are we going toward? That's why I say an action word, a verb. This is about actions. So I brought one last picture, and that is the concept of, I know today's challenges, but for example, a youth group or a school coming up and doing murals. Can you see that?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Isn't that gorgeous?
That is. Absolutely.
And they actually...
Getting thumbs up from everyone here at the cafe as well.
Art, it's universal. You don't need. I mean, everybody can understand it. Even people with disabilities can understand artwork. For the most part, and it just communicates the concept so clearly. Clearly they've got it. So those are some of the concepts that I had, and now we're talking about. I must let you know that I spent several years in Copenhagen, in Denmark, studying.
Ah.
Yes.
Knut's hometown, probably.
There you go. So Denmark, the Danish pastries, and so on are very fond memories. And one of the gifts that Denmark gave us is, of course, this little Lego block.
Oh, yes.
Now, the reason I like this Lego block is because they are all equal.
Ah.
So here's my challenge or my concept, seeing as we're talking about, precious Danish history and that great contribution to this legacy. Why don't we challenge people to use these identical blocks? Now, there are many shapes and sizes and little people and all sorts of things. I'm talking about these blocks. They are equal blocks. Why don't we make a challenge for kids, for anybody? I know many adults who play with Lego, by the way. Why don't we make a challenge, a Lego challenge, and have people use these equal blocks and show peace, equal justice?
That's an excellent idea. I absolutely love it. And I think because the way that you can show your creations there, folks, is to put them up at kingdom1000.com. We've already got a website for this, and we're looking at it. If you go there now, you can see Manju's recipes. You can see some of Rebecca's work and John explaining how he collects his stories. But you can put things there too. It's there for you to maybe show some of your artwork, for you to show your Lego creations too. And I think you're absolutely right. You should introduce a little element of competition in this, because that's going to encourage a lot of people to get involved, I'm sure. And we actually have a book that is coming out, I think later this month, early September, which contains all of the stories that we tell here in the Kingdom 1000 series and loads more. And we will make sure that we get that book signed by all of our guests and sent to, how many winners do you think we should have, Mary? Pick a number.
Well, let's leave that to the audience. Let's leave that to,
okay. As long as our audience are reasonable, because if the number is something like 2,000 or 3,000, we may struggle. Let's go with a number somewhere between.
We'll put it out there as a survey, and let's see what comes back. Let's make this a democracy, right?
Absolutely. I think that's what we should do. But we're definitely going to do that. We were hoping to announce a competition in the next couple of weeks, but I don't mind doing it early, because I think that's the absolute right thing to do it for and with. It's a beautiful, beautiful idea. And again, one that absolutely anyone can take part in. I think
Exactly.
while yes, you can sit down and you can draw, or you can sit down and make with Lego. One of the other things that we're exploring here in this series is the fact that art takes many forms.
Exactly.
And it can be, as John was telling us last week, just talking with people and recording what you're saying. As Manju was sharing in week number 1, it can be the meal that you cook with your family, to sit down and say, okay, we're going to have a 1000th birthday party for Knut's Proclamation, or whatever. So there are so many different ways of getting artistic. Folks, here in the Storytelling Cafe Zoom room, we can see that we've got several of you, which is great. If you have a question for Mary, though, please do type it into the chat. We sadly can't hear you, but we will be able to read any questions that you want to send over. So we know you're there. We can see your names popping up. Please do send us some questions as well.
So if I may,
yes,
Chuck,
please do.
I'd like to add to that celebration of Kingdom 1000, the year 2021. In honor of King Knut's law, the feast should include the popular Danish pastries.
Absolutely should, yes.
And my favorite, which is the open sandwiches that they have. Sometimes those sandwiches are sometimes 3 times higher than the little slice of bread.
Is that a Danish thing?
They're very much a Danish thing, very much a Danish thing. So here I come again with one of my pictures. So let's see if you can see it. Can you see that?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Now those are called smørbrød, which is basically, I guess, spread bread. But they open sandwiches and very popular in Denmark. And of course, definitely my favorite. So I do suggest that including in that celebration next year has to be some smørbrød and Danish pastries.
Maybe if Manju is watching, we can ask her to conjure up a few recipes for us as well.
Well, it was actually Manju that made me think of the smørbrød, because she was making this bread, right? And I was thinking, oh yeah, but what else can we put on top of it? Of course, smørbrød.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Then you have the time when it all started back in Alfred's time, when he was starting to think about how stronger people were together, and then you can marry it with a bit of what would it be, the background of Knut, where he comes from, the Danish culture, by splicing it all together. That's got equality inherent within it all the way through.
Exactly.
We've had a question about the work of Youth for Human Rights, or maybe your work in particular, Mary. It's about the work that you might be doing in Africa and Morocco. Are you doing things there for women's rights, and how are you approaching the subject? Because that is a tricky continent, isn't it, with much going on? But you're from South Africa yourself, aren't you?
Exactly. I was born and raised in apartheid South Africa, and that actually seeing discrimination and the devastating effects of discrimination is literally what led me to want to do something with my life that would help reduce discrimination, even just a little bit. And of course, then having studied, becoming an educator and so on, I really wanted to use education to empower and encourage and inspire change to reduce discrimination. And when we're talking about Africa, and you were mentioning women's issues, believe me, during this COVID-19 period alone, the issues of discriminate violence against women, alongside with the devastating statistics of human trafficking, it's escalated, with people being sometimes trapped in abusive homes, children being trapped in abusive homes. trapped being, of course, during because of the restrictions and the lockdowns. So the issues of women is universal. It's global. It's not everywhere. I mentioned all the improvements that we've got, and we definitely need to celebrate that. But we're a long way from perfect. And violence goes both ways. It's not only a one-way stream. Discrimination is discrimination. And so you were asking me about my work about that. Well, that's my joy. That's my passion. My passion is just to share knowledge, but share it in a way that's fun and easy to understand, and that people can understand that, oh, this has to do with me. This has to do with my life. It's not some dusty old documents stuck up somewhere on a wall somewhere at the United Nations or wherever. And so that's my passion, is to I love meeting people. I learn so much. I'm a teacher, but I can tell you, I'm constantly learning. It's so exciting to meet people, see their diversity, see them so proud in their own environments and making a difference. And that's what really inspires me, is seeing these youth. It's amazing working with youth. I just love youth. They bring an energy to the table. I'm very encouraged in my travels. I'm very encouraged about the world that we're building, because it's energetic, it's passionate, and it's about inspiring. It's about communicating with each other, inspiring each other, and then bringing important knowledge, valuable knowledge, tools to the youth so that they can make the difference.
Absolutely. I mean, they are the future, aren't they?
Absolutely.
They are the ones pedaling that bicycle. And
that's right.
If we see things like human rights as what we put in the sat nav, and that's what's guiding us there, we're on this journey. We hold them always in front of us. And yeah, we can look back, but there's a wonderful saying that they have here at the Missing Sock on a little sign that you sadly can't see, but it's just up there somewhere. A wonderful sign that says, "The only time you should look back is to see how far you've come." Exactly. And I think that is exactly what we should be doing right now. It's amazing how far we've come, and of course, it does bring great joy. And when you have joy, the thing that makes joy sweeter is sharing it with others. Exactly. So if you take that joy of being able to freely enjoy your own human rights, and you can share it with the nations around, then of course the world as a whole is going to be a happier place. And we can even look back at history and we can see that Knut, when he came into power, he had loads of these different disparate nations all bickering with each other. His reign maybe wasn't the longest, but it was the longest period of peace that the island of Britain had seen since the Romans were in charge. And the only reason the Romans had that was because, of course, they were a bit heavy-footed. So this was a man who decided, okay, I'm going to proclaim that everyone here is equal in the eyes of the law. And what do you get? You get a peaceful island. So if it could happen on this one island, it could easily happen the world over if we spread that word. So thank you for the work that you are doing there, Mary, to help make this happen. I think, yeah, we've got, like I said, the kids pedaling. We've got the sat nav loaded with the Universal Declaration. We've got the spokes. We've got the responsibility and everything. But I think it's important that we have folks like you to just nudge the direction, maybe hold the handlebars every so often and help steer us the right way. And you're doing some marvelous work with that. So thank you. Thank you ever so much.
Well, thank you so much. And I guess we're closing out. So I would just like to say this. So let it be known that we desire that justice be promoted and every injustice suppressed. That's in the footsteps, of course, of our King Knut.
Absolutely. Thank you ever so much, Mary. Well done for spotting that I was wrapping things up as well. We are really proud to be supporting Youth for Human Rights International through this series. If you have clicked on that little make a donation button, either at World Storytelling Café or at kingdom1000.com, all of the pennies that you put in the pot go to the amazing work that Mary's organization is doing. So if you have been inspired by anything that you've heard today, please do put a little bit in there to help us spread this message. Also, don't forget to celebrate yourself in some way. Create some art, as Mary said. Get the whole family involved. Maybe cook up some flatbreads, turn them into some open sandwiches. And this is a fantastic excuse to dig out the Lego, isn't it? And please share it with us. Share everything that you're doing with us at kingdom1000.com so that we can share it all together and spread this message as far as it will go. Right now, though, it only remains really for us to say cheerio, and we look forward to seeing you next week. So cheerio, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Bianca. Cheerio, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.